Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Miguron Keryx 2. This knife is available right now, so I'll link it down in the description if you guys want to check it out. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks so much to Miguron for supplying this knife for review. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this knife. Overall length of the Keryx 2 coming in at, honestly, it really looks and feels like a full size, like an 8-inch knife. It's actually about 7.65. It's not even 7 3/4 inches overall. The blade length, I'm coming up with 3.35. Cutting edge is 3 inches on the dot. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and the Ontario Rat Model 2. It's actually closer to the size of the Rat 2, which is really surprising. I think it's probably the ergonomic lines, which we'll talk about here in a second. But yeah, it's just got a little bit more presence, a little heft to it, so it does feel closer to the Rat 1. Let's go ahead and put it up against the Demco AD 20.5. How about the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3? There we go. And then last but not least, I think we'll put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and the Benchmade Bug Out. It's actually very close in overall length to the Bug Out. How's the action on this knife? It's very good. It's very similar to other Miguron knives if you've been sort of following along. This one, the action is about the same. The detent is tuned just fine for the front flipper, but I think the placement of the little slot here is a little better than some of the other ones. Not so good for doing this flick, right? I mean, you can still sort of pinch open it and wheel it out, but for those of you who like to do the reverse flick, this is probably one of the better Migurons. Because it is a front flipper and not a traditional flipper, there's nothing here, and this is more of an ergonomic thing. I guess it doesn't really matter in terms of, you know, the reverse flick. I just like this sort of combination reverse flick, no regular flipper tab on this design, on this profile. Obviously, I'm not saying that all flipper tabs are bad. It just depends on the design. But considering most of the Migurons that I've reviewed have been flippers, this is nice. I like this. Access to the lock bar is very good. You can see it's readily wanting to drop, and there's a nice sort of medium strength detent there. So everything really does feel nice and crisp. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. This is probably almost exactly the same. It's just kind of, you know, sort of an optical illusion because of the heavy chamfering up here. But the titanium is slightly contoured, and it is nicely chamfered at the edges. Let's go ahead and do length and height up against the PM2 and the Para 3. So we can see here that in terms of overall length, this guy is a little longer than the Para 3, definitely shorter than the PM2. Max height, though, quite a bit shorter, I guess, than the hump on the PM2 and Para 3. So outside of weight, you won't notice much difference in the pocket. Let's go ahead and weigh it for materials. We are looking at M390. I heard a rumor because I had so many knives in, you know, coming out in S90V, and I was honestly shocked at, you know, the fact that Miguron and a couple other companies were utilizing S90V and actually getting the heat treat pretty good and keeping it under that $200 mark. I was wondering, like, will that last? And I've heard a rumor that they're going to switch back to M390, and I don't know. S90V is a pretty expensive composition. So, like I said, it was kind of shocking to see it at under $200 there for a little bit. But it doesn't necessarily surprise me. Maybe we'll all be pleasantly surprised again, and they'll bring it back. There's nothing wrong with M390. It's been a great composition for a long time. I personally think S90V is better, and it felt like a better value, but you know, considering the price of this and the fact that they switched back to M390, there's nothing wrong with it. We're looking at M390. They are heat treating it the same way though, the sort of industry standard 59 to 61, which is anywhere from to, okay, you know, it'd be better at 60 to 62, but that's just my opinion. Anyways, the blade steel is M390, and then we are looking at machined titanium. I was gonna, oh, there we go, flashlight. The inside of this knife has been milled out for weight reduction. This is how you use a flashlight, right? The correct way to use a flashlight is to throw it at the thing that you're trying to shed light on. I don't know how you guys have been using a flashlight, but that's how I use it on this channel. Let's go ahead and measure blade. Oh wait, we didn't weigh it. Wait, I'm gonna guess this comes in at about 4.5 ounces, maybe 4.75. Let's find out. No, less, 3.95. I wonder why it feels so heavy. I don't know. 3.95, that's not bad. Sub 4 ounce full titanium knife, even considering it's not, that it is coming in under 8 inches. The balance is actually about right behind the pivot. So I don't know what's throwing me off. Maybe I'm just an idiot. That's the more likely conclusion there. Let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness. Blade stock thickness is coming in at 125 or so thousandths, which is fine. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'll get out my tools as per usual. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. Where's the thing? Can we find it? T8. I honestly am considering replacing this T8 bit just to get one with a deeper mill, so the indication of what it is better or more visible. We have just a couple of body screws. There must be some peg or something that's just sort of floated not floating, nested into the titanium, holding that backspacer from like rocking back and forth. But it's nice that there's just a couple of body screws and that they're all T8. We have a T8 for the pocket clip as well. No lefty mounting position, which is always a bummer. I like that there's minimal hardware. This is a very simple knife to take apart. As long as you have the right tools for the job and a place to put your hardware, you should be good to go. Have we done everything? We did the weight, we did the measurements, yeah. Let's go ahead and talk about this knife. So Miguron is kind of sticking to a certain type of aesthetic, right? There's not a ton going on, but there is a little bit going on, right? We've stuck with traditional knife lines that have worked very well with a lot of other knives. I mean, this is one of those knives where it sort of triggers people to say, that looks like a copy of the blank or the blank. It's because the thing that you're referencing is probably also a copy of a bajillion other knives, because the handle shape is one that we see all the time, and the blade shape is also one that we see all the time. There's just subtle differences between this and the other 1,000 designs that look similar. Miguron does a good job of execution at this price point. The overall quality and execution of this knife is fantastic. Titanium and M390 is always nice to see at sub $200, which is what we're looking at here. Taking a look at the other variants that are available of this, I noticed that they had versions with like an inlay and they had milled some stuff in there, and it was like a few bucks more. Seriously, this knife comes in at $189, which we don't normally talk about price at this point of the review, but $189 is great. I mean, if that's all you wanted to hear, then you don't need to go too much further in the review because it's going to be largely positive. But I want to make a point here. They have a version of this with like an inlay. It's like a carbon fiber inlay, and then they've milled little holes in here, and they still keep this really nice texture pattern that they've got in here. And it's like $5 more. Miguron, you should definitely do more stuff like that. I mean, some people absolutely like this look, just the plain Jane look. And I love that we have a version of this with like some interesting little fancy little details. But if it only costs people $5 more to do that, I mean, don't start doing it and be like, oh, people want it. Okay, that'll be an extra 30 to 40 bucks. Don't do that. But if you can do that and only charge $5 more for like some interesting inlaid versions, that's great. You should definitely do that more often. I think that's really cool. I think that Miguron pays attention. I think Miguron not only watches my reviews, but I think they watch a lot of different channels' reviews. And more importantly, I think they look in the comments and see what people are actually saying, specifically people who have actually picked the knife up. And that's good because it seems like Miguron is doing things. They're not like drastically altering things to appease everybody. And you can't do that. That would be silly, right? You still want to do your own thing, but you just kind of make left and right turns depending on what people are asking for. That's good. I think they're actually doing that. And I think you can continue to make people happy by offering a few different options, especially if you can keep the price down. So take a look at what I'm looking at, follow the links, and it'll show you what I'm talking about. But I thought that was pretty cool because usually we see companies do that. Oh, you want an inlay, you want some extra milling, well, that's going to be 30 to 40, maybe $50 more. Sometimes they'll charge $100 more for stuff like that, which is kind of crazy, right? But that's cool that they're able to do that. So I wanted to point that out. Ergonomically, this is one of the more comfortable. I mean, all of Miguron stuff has been reasonably comfortable, some more than others. I like this ergonomic setup. We have no flipper tab here, and this area, while it does come to a point, it's not super aggressive. It does allow you to choke up right behind the blade and comfortably. If you want to come back here, it's okay. This area sort of fits like 1 3/4 fingers for me. If your fingers are a little bit smaller, then you'll have a better ergonomic experience. If your fingers are a little bit bigger than mine, it'll feel a little bit more awkward. But the nice thing is that most people will be able to get a full 4-finger grip in this position and also definitely in the choked up position, which is nice. There's jimping here, which is really just to, allow you to get traction on the front flipper, but it probably should have been extended a bit further so that we could complement the index finger position. But that's okay because it's still very comfortable and there's plenty of lock-in. All of these areas right here are nicely knocked down. No hotspot with the clip because it is milled and flat and knocked down at the edges. Not like radiused, it's not like super pillow soft or anything, but it's fine and doesn't create any annoying areas. Like I said, lock bar access is good. It's not cut below, but there's just so much room right here, and all of this has been knocked out on one side. I think there's still plenty of room to get in there and get at it. The little slot here, the deployment slot, I guess is what we're going to call it, has also been knocked down, and that's really nice. They really like this sort of blasted finish. I'm getting my fingerprints off of it. And it's okay. It's all right. I wish they would experiment with some different finishes. We see flat black, which is a coating. I think it's normally a PVD coating. Or we see this blasted finish. And sometimes the blasted finish is indistinguishable from their gray PVD coating. That's fine. It all looks good. It's just really subdued and sort of minimalist, which is not a word that I like because it's losing meaning. It's kind of like gas station knife. The term gas station knife has absolutely lost all meaning. We got way too many people just throwing it around because they heard it just one day prior and are really excited to test it out on the first thing that they see that they don't really like. Yeah, you know who you are. There's so many people who use it that way, and they're just like, am I part of the club? But the blasted finish is all right, and it looks good, and it makes it look minimalist, which is, some people really like that aesthetic, and that's fine, right? Some people like the gas station aesthetic, right? Whatever you like, whatever you're into is fine. I would like to see them experiment with, a nice, like, high polished tumbled finish. That always looks really, really good. Miguron has demonstrated that they're able to do some pretty awesome stuff for not an insane amount of money. So showing off that ability, the extent of that ability, I think would be a good idea. But that comes down to preference, and it's not, a shiny stonewash finish is not universally preferable to everybody, but it would be nice to see a little bit more variety because we see a lot of the same stuff. But this is fine. There's a flat that runs out about 85% the length of the blade, and then we have, some people call this reverse tanto, some people call this, I had a guy absolutely light me up about the term reverse tanto and how it got started and how it's like a disgrace to the legacy of the proper tanto definition and all the definition of a blade-shaped police officer. My God, you guys think I'm joking? These people exist. It's just like Google blade historians. They took an afternoon to research it, so how dare anybody get it wrong? I'm laughing in your face. I like to call these Tuesday Octopus High Five surprises because whatever, right? Here's the blade shape. You could call it sheep's foot. You could call it reverse tanto. It's a little more sheep's footy to me than anything else. But whatever you want to call it, I think is fine, right? This is the shape that it is. We can see it. As far as the geometry goes, it comes down to a kind of a medium thickness cutting edge. We've got plenty of a tip, so you can still dig in and poke things if you want to. It'll slice, it'll cut, it'll do what you expect it to do, right? There's nothing overly spectacular about this. It's just flat ground. but it'll perform the way that you expect it to perform. It's not a blade shape that's overly thick or going to cause excess drag. It's also not the type of blade that you would use to perform surgery on a grape. It's somewhere in between those two things. I'll let you use your imagination, considering you can visually see it. The rest of the knife is pretty straightforward Miguron. I mean, I do like that they still do the milling here, the texturing on the titanium. That's really nice, and it definitely goes a long way over just like plain smooth titanium. Some people like that though, and it's one of those things where it's nice to offer variation, especially if you're able to do this stuff and it doesn't cost an enormous amount of money, right? The choke up position I want to point out is nice and roomy. It's not like they made a little tiny, I mean, it obviously depends on the size of your finger, but so many companies, like they make a forward choil and it's like, this is for people who, it's only for like 1/3 of the population, right? I feel like the average consumer who's going to be buying these has a finger thickness of almost exactly mine, right? Maybe that's bold to assume, but in my experience, it's generally about this size of choil that people are like, yeah, it's nice and roomy, right? If you have gigantic triple XL hands, those guys always like to make themselves known in the comments, then you're not going to fit in there, right? But for most people, you're going to fit, and that's nice. I like that they made that nice and roomy. We have a backspacer that is milled, right? Not just a simple pillar construction, so that's nice that they did that. There's no lanyard hole, which in my opinion doesn't really matter because the vast majority of people don't use lanyards. If you use lanyards, sorry, you're out of luck here. The pocket clip is only mountable for right-handed carry. And admittedly, if they had milled a slot into the titanium here, it would be a little bit more of an eyesore on this knife because we have some really, really nice texturing. And then again, we're kind of sacrificing, we're throwing all lefties under the bus just so that right-handed people don't have to look at the thing, right? I really wish that there was a way. I mean, I really think the wraparound and slotted clips are a good idea for a lot of these companies. Try and figure out, you can still mill it, but have it wrap around and slot into the back of the titanium, right? So that, and then, if you need to do sort of a hidden screw kind of thing, that way you can still keep the nice aesthetic of the textured titanium. And obviously this is trickier to do than I'm making it sound like it's just like a rub a magic lamp and wish for it kind of thing, right? It's trickier to do, and it's definitely, a more expensive thing to do, but it is a potential solution depending on the design. Lots of other knives have achieved it. I mean, it's not like we have one or two examples. We've got like thousands of examples of this being the case. And it's a nice way to get it done without causing too much of an eyesore. A lot of times even a hidden screw has to go enough into the titanium that it just makes more sense to have it go all the way through, in which case it's still a little bit of an eyesore. But some companies have gotten this done where they wrap it around, slot it in there, they put a screw in there, and the threads only go in so deep so as not have to go all the way through the titanium, and therefore you don't have to actually mess up the finish. It would be cool, but again, I don't have a magic lamp, right? So that might be asking a lot of Miguron. I just, I still feel bad for lefties that they get left out a lot of the time. Pocket clip has a little bit of a ramp underneath it. In and out of the pocket is very easy. Even though we've got a little bit of texturing here, it's not so crazy that you're going to fray up your pants. Good retention, good depth, right? Carry depth. We don't talk a lot about that anymore, but this is a decent, just sort of a medium depth, and that's fine. We have a steel lock bar insert that doubles as the over travel stop. We have internal stops that are attached to the blade and ride along channels on the inside of either titanium scale. That's nice. Increased stability and lock up solidity while still maintaining good smoothness. I like that. No blade play up, down, left to right, no lock stick, no double clutch, no pivot lash. Consistent action in here. This will smooth up even more over time. A good detent with a nice click, and it looks like we've got perfect centering too. Do we have it, or is it maybe just a hair off? I can't tell. Is it my imagination? I'm going to look at it in my light. It looks pretty centered to me. No detent lash either. This is a good design. It's, there's a lot of what Miguron does is just like their claim to fame is like excellent manufacturing quality, excellent execution for the money. They're using good materials, right? They're using designs that are not necessarily groundbreaking or brand new, but they work, right? For people looking for a good, if you had shown this to me, this exact knife, if you had shown this to me 10 years ago, I would have been like, oh my gosh, that's one of the greatest things I've ever seen. But this formula has been figured out, and Miguron is taking it and just taking the quality and absolutely maxing it out for the sub $200 territory in the knife world. So for people looking for their first premium titanium frame lock, just wanting to make sure that they're getting something that is so absolutely perfectly manufactured that you could take a magnifying glass and look over every last detail, yeah, this will do it. Really nice. The price, $189, I think is more than fair. I would love to see variation in blade finishes. I would really love to see you guys continue on with S90V. That was really cool there for a bit. I would also love to see more inlay stuff and different types of texture patterns, different types of, multi-anodizing or this or that, whatever. I like to see all these different little things, and if you can continue to keep it under $200, it's just going to continue to impress people. So nothing like mind-blowing here, but a very good design. I love that they finally have one that's not a flipper. I'm sure they have others, right? As far as the ones that I've handled, it's nice to see one that's not a flipper. So good stuff. More good stuff from Miguron. This is absolutely a recommendable knife, and I'll put it in my most recommended knives playlist. Thanks again to Miguron for letting me check this out. This will be linked down in the description. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.